evening. This is Dr. McDaniel. It's GYN Corner. Saturday evening. I thought I'd be able to do the presentation this morning, but of course, as I mentioned yesterday, the girls didn't have the horse lessons today, so chores and activities and errands got in the way. When we have the horse lessons, usually the girls take their horse riding lessons on Saturday mornings. That's at 8 o'clock. So while they're taking their lessons, I'm walking around the horse farm. I do the presentation. It's really nice. It's peaceful. I really like going to the horse farm now. But their teacher couldn't make it today. We'll be back next Saturday. So then, of course, I'm home and run around doing things, run to the store, blah, blah. So now the whole day is passed. I had a friend over today, and now it's late. It's late Saturday. Well, it's late for me. It's almost 9:30. So let's see. As the title stated, I'll be speaking about Bartholin's abscess. Yesterday, the day before, I spoke about the Bartholin's gland. So I gave the information on the Bartholin's gland and Bartholin's cyst, and I gave some information on the abscess. And today, I'll speak in depth on Bartholin's abscess. Now, the Bartholin's gland is the secretory gland of the vagina, and there are two of them, one on each side. The Bartholin's gland is a pea-sized or slightly smaller lubricating gland of the vaginal vault or the vaginal canal, and they can easily get clogged. So if they get clogged or blocked, the duct or the pore that leads into the vaginal introitus or the opening of the vaginal canal, if it gets clogged and it just gets clogged without any debris or bacteria trapped in it, it'll cause a cyst, which is a backlog or a pocket full of that mucoid lubricating fluid that the body produces. If it gets clogged with bacteria or debris, bacteria basically, what do you call them, microbes, then it will turn into an abscess, or what people call a boil sometimes, which is a purulent or a pus-filled pocket of fluid. The Bartholin's gland classically gets clogged up when there's a lot of secretions or liquid and friction. Combination of those will clog up that microscopic pore or duct from the gland. And then if bacteria is trapped, it turns into a purulent or a pus-filled abscess. Oftentimes, if women get an abscess, they'll come in when that gland is dilated or swollen up to about, usually about the size of a marble. So about 1.5 centimeters, almost 2 centimeters. And occasionally someone will come in, it's the size of a peach, a plum, a peach, or I've even seen about apple size because it's just gotten totally out of control. They've been holding off on coming in. Or sometimes it swells so rapidly, they'll tell me that the day before the abscess was the size of a marble, and then just during the night and then that by the morning it was the size of a peach or an apple. So it can swell quite quickly. Usually it takes a while. Usually it takes about 2 or 3 days, even 4 to 5 days sometimes. So it just depends on the bacteria and how rapidly growing the bacteria is. The bacteria is producing the pus, so the pus is what fills it up. Now, anytime you have an infection is an inflammatory process, so it will always be red, hot, swollen, and painful. We call that calor, dolor. There's a couple of other ors, can't remember them. Calor and dolor is hot and painful, and then it's because it's an inflammatory infectious process. Now, when you have an abscess, by definition, an abscess is always filled with at least bacterial strains that don't live in an oxygenated environment, and often ones that do. So with the Bartholin's gland, it's usually going to be a combination of bacteria from the vagina, the surrounding skin, and the intestines, because the anal area is right there. Classically, we will always test for an infection with chlamydia gonorrhea, because chlamydia and gonorrhea are the classic culprits for Bartholin's gland abscess. They're infections that are prone to cause inflammatory scarring, so they get the infection gets into the duct or the gland, the pore. It causes an inflammation which scars and clogs up the pore. It gets filled with bacteria, and predominantly chlamydia bacteria. And it's an increased risk when there's sexual activity, because sexual activity causes the friction that helps to clog up the pore. So classically, chlamydia and gonorrhea are always suspect whenever someone has a Bartholin's abscess. We also just check for aerobic, anaerobic bacteria to see if there is any, not to see if there's bacteria, because obviously that's the source of the infection, but to see if there's an unusual strain of bacteria, a strain of bacteria that's resistant to the usual antibiotics that we prescribe. So in that case, when the cultures come back, if we find there's an unusual strain, then we add that antibiotic to the regimen. As I stated the other day, one should be given at least 2 antibiotics, and ideally 3. So for me, if someone comes in and the abscess is small, it's like a marble or maybe the size of a walnut, then I'll prescribe 2 antibiotics. If it's larger than that, I'll prescribe 3, because you just want to arrest the production of the pus as quickly as possible. So the antibiotics are to stop the pus production, so to stop the increasing size of the abscess. Then the woman has to she has to take hot soaks as warm as possible. Obviously, you don't want anyone scalding themselves, not scolding, but scalding themselves. You don't want anyone scalding themselves and getting 3rd-degree burns, but you want them to take a hot soak in the tub, or what we call a sitz bath, where you just sit on the toilet. They do have little, what they call baskets or bowls made where you put on the toilet, and you just basically, you fill it with hot water, and you keep recirculating it. So you keep pouring it over your bottom area. It drains into the bowl or the basket, and then you keep picking it up, scooping up and pouring it again. That's really for people who can't or don't have a tub to take a tub bath. If you have a tub, that's going to be the best route. You just sit, soak in that tub. It doesn't have to be a long time, but it should be frequent. So if someone's at home, I tell them just do 5 to 10 minutes, ideally every 30 to 45 minutes, because that will keep the area as much as possible soaking with the heat. Heat will help increase the blood flow to the area, so your immune system can get to the area, the antibiotics in your immune system can get to the area. It also draws out impurities, so it'll help to bring that abscess to a head. So it will come to a head. The skin over it will get paper thin, what we used to call cigarette paper thin, and then it will pop. You don't want to have anyone draining it. So I get people, they always come in, they ask me if I can drain it or pop it. If there's a thick area of skin over it, it's not helpful for you to have it pop. First of all, you need the antibiotics on board to stop the increasing size and to try to sterilize the area before you just pop it. If you go to urgent care of the ER, they're always going to pop it. So they're taking a knife, they're cutting through a lot of normal tissue to drain it. And then if you don't do the hot soaks, it's just going to seal up, and then you're going to have a backlog of that pus skin. And if you don't get appropriate antibiotics, it's going to just keep building up. I've seen people come in with that. It's inappropriate treatment. So you want them to first get the antibiotics on board to stop the increasing size, and you want them to do the hot soaks. So the antibiotics, your immune system, blood flow gets to that area, and you want it to come to a head. If someone comes in, they've done all that, it still hasn't popped, they're in a lot of discomfort, then I'll look at the area. I can see where the weak point is, where it's getting thin. I just touch it. It's what we call fluctuance. So you touch it and it feels like a water balloon. It feels like the very, very, very thin layer, almost like baklava dough or phyllo dough. So if it's that thin, then yeah, I'll take a scalpel and I'll just prick it. Boom, you get a ton of pus pouring out. It's usually pus filled with blood, clumps of blood and pus, and it smells like a dead animal because it's necrotic tissue. It's an abscess, bacteria, a ton of bacteria, and it smells like you just opened a bag with a dead cat or dead rat that's been in it for a week. It's a horrible smell. Absolutely horrendous. In fact, one of the ladies who had an abscess about 2 weeks ago, she sent me a message because we have online portal messaging. She's like, Dr. McDowell, I just want to let you know I did the soaks. I had seen her maybe 2 days. I think I saw her on a Tuesday, and she sent me the message on a Thursday or Friday. So I'd seen her 2 or 3 days prior, did what I said, gave her the antibiotics, told her to do soaks. And I told her that it should come to a head. The more often she soaks, the faster she'll get it to drain on its own. You want it to drain on its own because it will drain more efficiently without scarring. Once it pops, you want to keep soaking so you can keep that pore open and it can drain completely. Well, she sent me a message, said, Dr. McDowell, it finally popped today. It was like 2 or 3 days later. And she said it smells horribly foul. Of course it does. And there's just tons of gross, nasty, thick chunks of pus and blood. And a lot of it coming out. So she said, I just want to let you know. So I told her, yep, good job, and then just keep soaking it so that until it completely stops draining. If you stop soaking before it completely stops draining, it will seal over within about 24 to 36 hours, and then you're going to have a bunch of gunk behind it. And then it's going to be more difficult for it to drain again on its own. That's when people come in, it stopped draining. I already know you stopped soaking it then. And then I have to take a scalpel and incise and drain it again. And then if I incise and drain it, then I'm going to take a Q-tip and I'm going to dig around to make sure it gets cleaned out. Because what happens is you get little, what we call murals or trabeculae. So you get little, like a honeycomb, layers of walls basically inside the abscess. So you can have one area that's open, another area that has a pocket of pus in it. So I'm going to take a Q-tip, and I'm going to have to completely clean it out, break up all the little walls that have formed inside the abscess and make sure everything's open and draining. Put peroxide in it to clean it. It's quite painful, very, very uncomfortable, painful. Lidocaine doesn't help because you're digging into that abscess area. You can't infiltrate that with lidocaine, so it's going to be highly uncomfortable. So it's easier for people in the long run to soak, let it drain on its own, and then to keep soaking so that it continues to drain. And then continue the antibiotics for at least 24. I tell people ideally they want the antibiotics to continue 2 to 3 days after it's completely stopped draining, but minimum is 24 hours after it's completely stopped draining. And then it will heal from the bottom up. So however large that abscess is, it will heal from the bottom up. So once it stops draining, keep soaking it for at least 2 or 3 days, and then keep it aerated and dry. Clean, cool, dry skin heals better than wet, moist, dank skin. Once someone has had an abscess, then they have what we call a nidus for infection. So they will always be susceptible to another Bartholin's abscess or cyst because that duct or pore is compromised now. It's had an inflammatory process with post-inflammatory scarring. So after that inflammation, there will always be microscopic scarring in the area, and they're always going to be prone or susceptible to another abscess or blockage. So what I tell patients to do, and everyone who does this, it works like a charm. If you've had a Bartholin's abscess, then you should always, instead of taking showers, take a tub bath or a tub soak. Soak in the tub for at least 10 minutes every week, ideally twice a week, always. And if you've had an abscess on one side, you're at an increased risk for that duct to get clogged up and an abscess on the other side. So if you do that always just make it a ritual, a habit, once a week, ideally twice a week, to always take a soak in the tub for at least 10 minutes. That will keep the pore open, the skin exfoliated, and you won't get another abscess. But one of the patients I saw this week who had a Bartholin's abscess. It was her second abscess. She'd had an abscess on that side a few years back, and of course she has it now. I didn't see her a few years back when she had it, or I would have told her to do the soaks. So I guess that's everything on the Bartholin's abscess. This is Dr. McDaniel at GYN Corner. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone's who has seen and will see the series on the Bartholin's gland, Bartholin's cyst, Bartholin's abscess has gotten useful information. Please check out the YouTube channel. It's also called GYN Corner. I have, as I said, a link on this Facebook page. I think it's in the descriptions or something like that for the Facebook page. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll be back tomorrow with a new subject. Have a good Saturday night. Bye.